One of the more mind-bendy things we talked about in today's session was the idea of having overlapping timelines or overlapping lifetimes. We can talk about this in terms of parallel lifetimes as well. Now, there are different definitions for each one of these things, and having overlapping lifetimes is just something that I came up with the information that my guides gave me in this particular session. As I was mentioning about what happened with Maggie, was that she had a lifetime where she was existing in this current time in a previous life. So there were technically two versions of her soul existing simultaneously on this planet. And that can happen. And I'm sure it happens quite often. Welcome to the Akashic Recordings. My name is Annette Delu, Akashic Conduit, Channel, and Spiritual Guidance Coach. What you're about to experience is an authentic Akashic Records session with me and one of my clients. Shared with permission and with names changed for privacy, these sessions offer a sacred window into the records themselves. By listening, you're invited into these beautiful stories, an intimate glimpse into the wisdom, healing, and guidance held within the Akashic field. You might even find yourself connecting to some of the information there, feeling some aha moments that the information resonates for you and your life. If you would like to book a session with me and be part of the podcast, please feel free to head to my website at infinitesoul.com. When you book your session, just make sure to check the box that you would be interested in having your session utilized for the podcast. If you've been wanting to learn how to connect more deeply with your intuition and the Akashic Records, I'm happy to share that registration is now open for the next session of Soul Discovery Workshop. In this workshop, you'll learn how to connect with your higher self, your angels, and your guides. You'll be guided through shadow work to help integrate fears and move through the blocks that can cloud intuitive connection. You'll also have the opportunity to practice your psychic and intuitive gifts with others in a supportive space, so you can build the confidence to recognize when a message is truly coming through or when it's simply a thought or some of your fears. We'll focus on honing your discernment and understanding how your messages come in, because everyone receives intuitive information differently. Everyone has these gifts. This workshop is about remembering yours. If this experience has been calling you, you can register now by visiting infinitesoul.com. I would love to welcome you into the Soul Discovery Workshop. Today, we are back speaking with Maggie. This episode, we are going to be talking more about her relationship with her mother, parallel and overlapping lifetimes, and having lifetimes where maybe you weren't such a great person. It's important to know the aspects of our previous incarnations as it pertains to the challenges we've had, because it really does shape who we become, not only as people, but it shapes our soul as well. And I'm going to show you how having negative experiences or being, let's say, the villain in someone else's story is not necessarily the bad thing that many people think that it is. And lastly, we talk a little bit about ascension partners. And that is something that I will get into a little bit further once we get to the discussion portion of today's episode. So tell me, what's going on? Tell me why you decided to book the session today.
So I remember we had talked last time about doing a second session to go over some other things. Like I think we were going to go over the relationship with like my mother. And then I know we went over like life purpose and soul purpose, but I don't think we did soul origin.
Oh, okay. So that's certainly something we can do.
Yeah, I took notes from like the last session. So I just had like a couple questions from like the last session and then this new stuff that I just talked about.
All right, perfect. So go ahead.
I just had one question. I remember when you had said that I had that Aztec life. I was touching the earth and feeling the earth and all that kind of stuff. But you said something interesting that I didn't catch last time. So you said I had this big, dark, bushy hair, but you said that I had blue eyes. And I was just wondering, did the Aztecs have blue eyes? Because I didn't know they had blue eyes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, we can take a look at that.
This is the guy that we talked about before that had passed away. And we went over why I was going through all that grief. I remember you had said without their energy having to go through any further trauma that they had been through in the past, trauma that set them back. So I was wondering, what trauma was that? What life was that? Because I was interested in that. I think those are the only kind of questions that I had from like the last one.
And then what was it about your mom that you wanted to talk about?
I don't even know how it came up last time, but we were talking about it's actually kind of a funny vision. I was actually laughing about it because you said you just saw her in this container thrashing around.
Oh, funny.
And I'm like, yeah, that's totally her. I feel like the mother and she's the unruly child. And it's been like this since I was a kid. And even up until like this week, I'm trying to let go and let her be herself and everything. But she's very manipulative. Oh, you don't love me. Oh, you didn't hug me hard enough. And I'm just constantly babysitting her. She gets herself in a lot of hot water. She gets involved with like crazy people. And the thing is I'll let her do her thing. That's not the problem. She's an adult, but she drags me into her life. And just to give a short example so you understand where I'm coming from, for instance, she had this thing where she started dating and hooking up with guys in prison. And she would send them my picture to give to their friends. And then all of a sudden I would get a letter in the mail from some dude in prison.
Oh, my Lord. Okay.
I would confront her like, what are you doing sending my picture and giving my home address? I have no idea who these people are.
Right.
And she's like, well, the dude's lonely in there. Why don't you just write him? Like, there's something wrong with me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Just stuff like that. They're getting involved with shady, dangerous people and then trying to involve me in it. So that's a little example of how she is. So
Wonderful. I would like to thank Akula, my Akashic guide. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Archangel Metatron and Archangel Sandalphon for being here as well and guiding us through the records for all of the messages that we need today. Thank you. Today we are opening up the Akashic Records. Thank you. All right. So where do we need to go first? Okay, we're going to talk about mom first.
okay.
All right. So the first question I'm going to ask is, why did she choose her mom in this lifetime? All right. So we have to back up to get the answer to that question. All right. So let's take a look at what we need to look at in order to get there. All right. So this stems all the way back to Atlantis, actually.
Oh, geez. Okay.
You knew each other as souls prior to this time that we're looking at, but this is the particular lifetime that we need to look at in order to get context for why you're connected. The first thing I'm seeing is that your mom in this lifetime does she have dwarfism? Is that what this is? Yes. Okay. So she's much smaller in stature than you are.
Okay.
She has trouble walking. She's kind of like hobbling almost. And you were quite tall. You were a man in this lifetime. You were quite handsome. And I'm seeing that you actually bullied your mom quite a bit in that lifetime. They're showing me an image of you literally kicking her.
Oh, God.
Is she a man in this lifetime? She is not. She's a woman. Okay. Almost like you saw her as not human. You saw her as just like an animal of some sort. You have some pretty big arrogance going on in this lifetime. You were quite good at what you did, and it kind of went to your head a bit. You had two other men that were with you, that were friends with you, who were also very good looking, very good at what they do. There was one person that's sort of hiding behind the three of you, and it's a woman. She was sort of part of your friend group, so to speak, but she also was somebody who had a bit more compassion and didn't like the way that you treated your mom. So after you and your friends would sort of bully her, this woman who was part of your friends group would just kind of go over to her and ask her if she was okay and ask her if there's anything that she could do. And I'm hearing you call back to her. You're saying something to the effect of, don't waste your breath, because she doesn't have any brain cells to even comprehend what you're saying. You have a very closed-minded view of the world in general, meaning that like anybody who is not perfect, like you are, like your friends are, you just see them as unfortunate, and you kind of feel like they should all just be put out of their misery. Where did she get this arrogance? Like, where did it come from? Because it's obviously not part of who she is as a soul. So where did this all stem from? There were a few lifetimes she had in Atlantis, and this is one of them, where her power, her success, and the way that she incarnated went to her head, essentially. She was completely disconnected from her soul and was completely focused on three-dimensional things, which is interesting because in the time of Atlantis, there was a time where people were much more connected to their spirit, to their souls than we are now even. There was a lot of information out there at that time of how to connect, of how to be loving and compassionate and connect to the other side. Your parents at that time in that lifetime were part of this community that connected to the other side on a regular basis. And so your parents were able to manifest great wealth. They were able to manifest everything they ever wanted. And it was because of this that you did not have a childhood that was challenging in any way in this lifetime. You had everything handed to you. So due to the lack of challenge in your lifetime for that life, the lack of contrast with everything coming so easily to you, you had very little compassion for others going through hard times. This was part of your lesson in your trajectory, realizing that in order to move forward on this path, the contrast is necessary, the challenge is necessary. And that if you are just handed things and it's easy, that you just take it all for granted. You don't consider the deeper meaning of things. You take things for surface meaning. Your mom had specifically incarnated in that body for that lifetime because she knew what it meant to connect with people who were having some sort of challenge in life, whether it be physical, mental, situational. And it was at this time that you made the decision to work together. Nothing really changed in your relationship in that lifetime. It all just kind of continued the way that it always had been. You're always bullying her, and until there came a point where you moved to a different place and you didn't see her anymore. But she was the person that you were the cruelest to. And so when you crossed over in that lifetime, you saw the pain that was inflicted on her. You saw and felt the hurt, and you wanted to make sure that you never did that again. You wanted to make sure that you never treated anyone like that ever again. So you were talking to your mom's soul on the other side, and you're asking her, how did you do it? How did you get through it? How did you get through all of the things that I did? And your mom is saying, it's not about getting through it. It's about loving yourself through it. And she had to work on that. She had to work on loving herself. So no matter what you said, she didn't take on the energy that you were giving her. As troublesome as it was, as hurtful as it was, it did force her to start to understand what it means to love herself. From that point on, you did not incarnate for quite a while together. And then you incarnated again several more times, not as any sort of close relation, more as acquaintances or friends, somebody you worked with. But she was always showing you the downtrodden, the challenged, and showing how she can help them evolve in some way. One of the things that you decided to do just prior to this lifetime was that you decided that you wanted to have an experience with her that showed you her perspective of where she's coming from. Because even with all of these incarnations together, you still didn't understand where she was coming from. You didn't understand how she operated and why she did what she did. So as you moved forward in the next lifetime, she was your sister. This is the first time you incarnated in a familial role. You got everything. She got nothing in that family. You got toys that she never got. You were the older sister, so you got clothes and things like that that were just sort of handed down to her. She never played the victim, though. She took it and she was grateful, which made you actually want to take more from her. Your thought process was like, if she's happy with what she has, then there's no reason for her to have more. And so you kind of took that as an opportunity to take more from her. She was really hurt because you wanted to take from her, not because of the things that you took, because they were just objects, they were just toys, they were just whatever. But it hurt her that you wanted to take things from her. As you started moving into your older years in that lifetime, you started to see who she was. You started to connect more into your intuition, and you started to feel a lot of the remorse you had for the things that you had done in past lives. You were able to access your past lives in this last lifetime with her. And they're saying to me it was sort of a one-off thing. It wasn't like you could access a lot of your past lives, but it's like your higher self decided that it was worth it for you to get some of these past lives into your consciousness so you could learn. Okay. So moving into the lifetime that you have with your mom now, you chose to incarnate with her in this particular scenario. because there was less of a chance that you would be in a role of wanting to take advantage of her. With her being sort of in a position of power, being a mother, it was an easier situation for you to be able to learn. She incarnated in this particular situation with her mother and her father, specifically because it would give her an element of destabilization. She needed to be destabilized because the relationship that you have together is one of teaching compassion and being able to understand when it's time to draw boundaries. Because in all of those lifetimes, your mother did not draw boundaries. She took whatever abuse she received, and not only from you, but from others as well. She walked the path of peace without drawing those boundaries. Who she is now is as a result of her upbringing, and it is by design. She is meant to be who she is right now. And who she is right now as a human is actually much more of a departure from who she has been as a person and as a soul in the past. She's playing a role, if you will. There are times in this lifetime where she's used this energy to get back at you for some of the things that you have done in the past. Some of this hurt and anger that she had kind of bottled up inside over lifetimes just kind of decided to come out in this lifetime. And that was part of the plan, so to speak. Because even though she was walking the path of peace, she wasn't releasing the emotions she was feeling. So one of the things that is coming through too is like what you were saying with her asking you to write prisoners and things like that. That is her connecting you to the downtrodden. That is her saying to you, you have to treat people with respect no matter what stage in life they are, no matter who they are. And there's a little bit of a distortion in there because she's doing it in a way that is intrusive to you, as opposed to just having a conversation about it or anything else like that. She is basically shoving it in your face and crossing your boundaries of what you're comfortable with. And this is something that she has been doing throughout the course of your lifetime. I want to say it was almost like an overcorrection in your roles. She was meant to show you how to have compassion for others who are going through difficult time by giving you a difficult time in a mother-daughter relationship, but has taken it a couple steps too far. There are times when we decide to play a role for people and we incarnate in shadow. And sometimes that shadow gets a mind of its own and it creates its own energy. And there's not a lot we can do when that happens. We just have to ride it out. And so for you in this life, you have the compassion that you need. You've learned the lesson that you've needed to learn. And she keeps on trying to shove it in your face. It's like you've crossed the finish line and she keeps on telling you to keep running. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell us about her relationship with her mom? No, not at this time. Okay. All right. I'm going to pause there. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Probably after listening to that, that probably explains why I feel guilty if I don't like take care of her, if I'm not making sure she's okay. It's a constant, I feel guilty.
And that would make sense as to why you feel that, because of the sort of soul echoes you've had from previous lifetimes with her.
Well, I sounded like a real jerk.
You know what? We've all been there. We've all done it. I don't know a single person ever that hasn't been in that place at some point. I certainly have. I've seen past lives of myself where I've been really not great, borderline horrible. So yeah, we've experienced everything we can on this planet at this point. If you're at a point where you are connecting to your soul and you're in your spiritual awakening process, chances are you have experienced pretty much the entire spectrum of humanity, of everything that you could possibly experience.
I'm sure I have.
So, okay, I just have one other question about your mom and then we can move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that we can do to help alleviate the relationship between the two of them? Because her mom is taking it a little bit too far, like, is there something that she can do to alleviate the situation? We would only suggest that she follows her heart. What is in her heart to do? When your mother crosses a boundary, such as giving your address and information to strangers, that is something that is not okay. And so you do need to draw a hard boundary there. What you can do, though, is you can acknowledge whatever she is doing as something that she wants to do and allow her to do it. And if she feels that it's helping her or helping them in some way, then that's fine. If it is crossing a line or a boundary, then you need to call it out. Choose your battles. You don't have to fight every single thing that she does. If it's doing potential harm, meaning privacy, physical, emotional harm, then that is where you do have to take action. You will have to step in. But if it is something that is relatively harmless, but you just don't understand why she's doing it, just allow her to do whatever she's going to do. You can't control what she's going to do. The one thing you can also work on is the guilt that you feel. You can release that guilt now. You are no longer that person back in Atlantis. You are no longer that person who has no compassion. You are a different person now. And you can release that guilt from all the previous lifetimes. Releasing the guilt and having compassion for who you were and for the experiences you had. Okay. All right. So then let's move into your soul origin. You're really rooted in who you are as a soul. And there is an element of perfection here. Oftentimes, souls are born out of explosions or stars. Other times, they are born from the sheer will to have an experience. And they often break off from divine source energy in groups of souls. Your soul, on the other hand, is a singular soul that broke off on your own. So from that perspective, you are pure divine source energy, undiluted or changed. When soul families break off from divine source energy, there is a process by which it changes those souls. It's same if you are born from the Big Bang or supernova or stars. It changes the energy of the soul. There are many souls like you who have broken off from divine source energy on their own. And there is a purity about you because of that. There is a direct connection to the divine that you have that is clear and unbridled in its energy. You spent a lot of time on a planet that is incredibly high vibrational, and you bounced from planet to planet in that star system. You had a lot of incredible experiences there as a being, alchemy, connecting to the planet itself. I'm seeing at one point you were a liquid, for lack of a better term, like a liquid being. They're just showing me you as this liquid being, and I'm not sure why. Just give me a second. It was easier because you weren't solid. It was easier to have the experiences that you wanted to move through. You were in the flow of what your soul was meant to do. And I'm hearing you say, like, I'm cleansing the planet and then going back into the liquid, and then I'm cleansing the planet and going back into the liquid. So it was literally your energy field that was clearing the energy of this planet. That's interesting. Why is that pertinent to what we're talking about here? It speaks to her perfectionism. Okay. Always wanting things clean and perfect. Always wanting things to be clear of lower and negative or darker energies. It is part of what your soul purpose is, because I think we covered that in the last session. So it's just sort of an extension of that. So the other thing that is important to recognize about your soul origin is that you, as an individualized soul, decided to break off from divine source energy to have these experiences. Not all souls have that decision or make that decision. Sometimes it just happens. One example would be many of the souls that broke off from divine source energy during the Big Bang. Most of those souls did not necessarily have a choice in the matter. It just sort of happened. It was part of what was being experienced by divine source energy. So the souls that were created out of the Big Bang were just kind of, I don't want to say a byproduct, but I mean, it's kind of sort of a result of what happened. So there is an element here of choice that is significant in the type of soul that you are and how you move through the world and how you move through your incarnations. You're very particular about what it is that you are meant to do and what you want to do and how you go about it. Is there anything else that we need to talk about with her soul origin? No? Okay. Do you have any questions about your soul origin?
No, I don't think so.
So you had asked about blue eyes in the previous lifetime?
Yeah, in the Aztec life.
So they're just saying that it happens. They're giving me an example. My lineage is from Iraq. My father was born in Baghdad. And I have a lot of cousins who have red hair and green eyes or dark hair and blue eyes. And the reason why is because way back when the Vikings invaded Iraq, it became a recessive gene in the lineage, in the bloodlines of people in Iraq. For example, if I were to have a child with somebody who also has a recessive gene for dark hair, blue eyes, I could have a child with somebody who has brown eyes, brown hair. I have brown eyes, brown hair, and the child could have blue eyes. And that's just because the recessive gene is in my lineage. That's what they're saying to me, is that that's how things just happened.
Oh, okay. Because I know it sounded like it was like an ancient life, and I didn't think any Vikings or Spanish or whatever had even gone there yet. So I was just wondering if there was like some kind of like blue-eyed tribe, or maybe there were people there before and it's just not written down in history.
That is correct. There was a lot more exploration that we don't know about in ancient history.
Yeah.
Especially, they're showing me when the continents were also closer together. If you consider, so when you look at the trees and the flora in, let's say, Nova Scotia, it's going to be very similar to that of Scotland because they were once one land. There was a lot more moving about the planet than our history books write about.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Because if you consider, we're trying to identify things from archaeology, and we can't necessarily know exactly the type of people that were where and when unless they actually died there, right?
Yeah.
Like unless their bones were there and they could actually trace it back. Like you don't know who popped in and popped out or traveled around or that kind of thing. So yeah, they're saying there's no big reason for it. It's just something that happens. There were also some superstitions back then too regarding people with different colored eyes. They're saying that depending on the tribe, like some tribes thought if you had blue eyes that you were able to see clearer, that you were able to have more of the sight.
Interesting.
Some tribes thought it was a curse. It just depended on what the belief systems were at the time.
Yeah. I want to do some research on that. Like, was there blue-eyed Aztecs? Like, who knows what I'll be able to find?
Yeah, you might be able to find some information on it. Who knows? We'll see. I have been definitely surprised in the past where I've done research after a session where I'm like, oh, is this really what happens? And finding out that, yeah, that's in fact what happened. Okay, cool. Sometimes you can get confirmation, but sometimes the information isn't out there. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So then we wanted to take a look at past lives with him as well.
Yeah, when you said, you did give me a past life last time, but when you said without their energy having to go through any further trauma that they had been through in the past, I was wondering what traumatic, well, I'm sure there's probably more than one, but whatever one comes up that I need to hear today.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. So let's take a look at what lifetimes you may have had together that were traumatic that we need to take a look at. All right. I'm getting a no, and I'm getting like a big X. So they're saying, no, we don't want you to access those lifetimes. Okay. They're saying it's not necessary.
Okay.
Okay. So then is there anything that you can share with us that we want to connect to regarding this situation? This lifetime for you has been about the clearing and cleansing of that energy. There are times when knowing a past life will help you to move energy out of your energy field. There are also times when the energy is almost gone and dissipated, and looking at a past life will just simply reactivate that energy. That is the place where you've gotten to now. While you might still feel that grief and pain over losing him, it is not nearly as much as it had been in the past. There are many situations that you have encountered together that have caused pain, not only through experiences that you've had together, but also in losing each other at various times. This lifetime specifically was meant to wash that energy away for you. It was meant to show you the energy that you had been stuck in for quite some time and allow you to finally purge that energy from your energy field. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It must have been they're pretty traumatic if they don't even want to show me.
Well, I mean, yes and no. How do I put this? Sometimes it doesn't have to be the worst thing on the planet that you experienced, and that's the reason why they're not telling you.
Yeah.
It can simply be just that the guides are basically suggesting that to open that can of worms, so to speak, is just going to reopen the wound, and it doesn't need to be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not about how horrific it was. It's just about not wanting to reopen a wound.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I recognized it when I was grieving and saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel now about it, I guess is the question.
You mean about the grieving?
Yeah, about the grieving and about him. Like when you think of him, like what is your general state of emotion?
It's a lot better.
Yeah.
Because like I felt before, and you said last time that the soul contracts weren't completed, and that's what I always felt. And so I felt better knowing that eventually those will be completed. Because I think it was funny when you said it wasn't like we're like soulmates or like twin flames or anything like that. I never really felt that. But I think you said we were more like ascension partners. And I think that's why part of why like I was like moping around because I'm like, hey, I had this like partner in crime per se doing this spiritual thing and now he's gone and I feel like alone and abandoned in that area. Yeah. And it's like, geez, I have to do this all on my own.
What's interesting about that is that there are a lot of people out there, and myself included, I really felt this for a very long time. There are a lot of people out there that feel like I can't complete my ascension or I can't go forward in my spiritual awakening because I need this person or this person needs to be part of my experience or whatever their belief is about that. And the one thing that I have realized is that it is absolutely untrue. We don't need somebody else to complete or to move through a next phase of our ascension. We have everything that we need to do it ourselves. Can it be helpful to have somebody there and to have somebody help? Certainly. Absolutely. It can be really wonderful to have somebody giving you experiences that you need or showing you the way or giving you examples of things that they have experienced and allowing you to integrate that information.
Yeah.
It is not necessary for one person to be with another in order for the ascension to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we weren't meant to be together this life because like I said before, I didn't look at him that way, but it's nice to know he's still on the planet and I could run into him.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. And it was weird too when I've kept a diary for a year since the 80s, and I had looked back in some of the stuff I had written when I met him and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. And it was funny because at one point, I remember he sat real close to me and he looked at me and his eyeballs were like darting back and forth like a ping pong ball. And I don't know why I remember this. And it was like, he was just like looking at me like he knew me from somewhere, like he couldn't figure out what it was about me. Just like remembering like little weird things like that. And I guess I have a question. I know that there's like parallel lives. So I'm wondering, is that like a parallel life?
Yes.
Okay.
The one thing that is really fascinating to me about how we incarnate is that we could have another one of our own incarnations here on the planet at the exact same time that we're living our life now.
Yeah.
So there could be somebody else on this planet that is your exact soul energy that could be an older version of you or a previous version of you that is living out their life and learning the lessons and doing all those things. Now, I'm going to ask the guides the reason for that to happen because I haven't asked the reason why, but we can ask in regards to this particular situation to give us context as to why there would be overlap there. So give me a second. We're going to explain this to you as a general rule, but it always depends on the soul and how they decide to incarnate. There will be times when you will overlap in your energies. Think about it as passing the baton energetically. So if, let's say you have a version of yourself that is incarnated in a particular time, and you want to make sure that the energy is not lost, that the lessons are not lost, you might decide to incarnate in a lifetime that is overlapping your last lifetime or a previous lifetime. Doesn't have to be the last lifetime that you were in chronologically. It could be 7 lifetimes ago, but it is a life that is happening in a period of time that is overlapping. So if you imagine the previous version of yourself living out this life and the newer version of you is born, the energy is still able to be handed off on a physical level, so to speak. When you hand off lessons on a soul level, sometimes they can get lost in the shuffle of the psychic debris that you have. So it is a much more beneficial situation to be able to hand off energies while you're still human and while your human self is being born. You don't see it often. It's not something that happens all the time, but it does happen. And as Annette was saying earlier, most of the larger energies, souls that have been on this ascension process for quite some time, do have the ability to live out simultaneous lifetimes in the same time frame. meaning living in one body and living in the next, and having those be two completely different experiences, one being a past life, if you will, and one being a future life. And how we determine whether it's a past life or future life is simply the evolution of the soul. Is it a less evolved version of you, or is it a more evolved version of you? That is how we will describe it in a linear fashion, even though linearly these things do not happen. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share with us about that? No, not at this time. Okay. All right, cool. Whatever he decided to do in that regard, that's his journey to see like what he needed to do to like pass the baton of that energy over. For whatever reason he did that, he did.
Yeah. Well, does that mean I had the parallel life too? Because I know you went up into like the 50s and I was thinking, okay, did I die young? Because I was born in 71. So.
I'm trying to see what they're showing me. Hold on. I'm not quite understanding it yet. Just give me a second. Okay. So they're saying you did not die young. And so, yes, you do have an overlapping life, but it's not for the same reason.
You mean the same reason as him?
Yeah.
There's two of me running around right now.
Yes.
I always thought that would be so crazy if for some reason, I feel like this was like maybe like in Chicago. I don't know why, but I was there not too long ago. And a few years ago, I had a reading and it was almost exactly what you told me. Same time period, 50s and everything. And so that's why it was very interesting that you said almost the exact same thing with a life with him. And so I believe it was in Chicago. I don't know why. But when I was there, I go, oh my God, am I going to run into myself?
That's hilarious.
I kept thinking, okay, there's some older lady. And I'm like, is that me?
Oh, that's so funny.
I know that sounds crazy. And like, that's not something I can get on social media and talk about. But yeah, I totally believe in parallel lives. But yeah, it was weird. It was like almost, I mean, there was some differences with the reading, but both the reading I had before and your reading was almost exactly the same, like with him, same time period and everything. That's really weird. So I'm wondering where I'm running around. That is so funny.
So the information they're giving me right now actually is that you're not running around anymore. So that version of you passed, they're saying 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you did have a version of yourself running around. She's not around anymore.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why you had the overlapping lives is because of the time frame you wanted to incarnate. So there's some changes and things that were made energetically on this planet during the time that you were alive in the last lifetime. And so your soul is like, well, I really need to be born at this particular time in order to experience these particular things. So I'm going to incarnate, even though I'm going to have this overlapping experience. And I'm saying overlapping, but you have never met your other version of yourself.
Yeah.
And there are times when we are not meant to meet that other version of ourselves.
Yeah.
We can just understand that if we are meant to meet them, we will, but oftentimes it's just allowing that other version of ourselves to learn the lessons they need to learn. But the energetic connection you have with that person is still there. So you're still, even in dream state, you're still exchanging information back and forth between each other. So you're teaching each other things, you're learning as you're going along.
Mm-hmm.
That's super important for you to understand, because you may have connected to some information when you had that overlapping energy that feels like it came out of the blue. It feels like information that maybe you didn't know before, and then all of a sudden you knew it. And yes, of course, that can kind of come through in claircognizance and things like that. But this information is coming directly from the other version of yourself.
That is so funny. So parallel life, that was the woman that just passed away a couple of years ago, is the life that you told me about when my father wouldn't let me be with him and I married somebody else. That's that life, right?
Correct.
That's so funny. I'm like, I can't even imagine if like just anybody, not just me, if they ran into their parallel self. I mean, that would just be like so weird.
Well, and what's interesting is that I'm seeing that she was actually aware of him too.
She was aware of who?
Your parallel self was aware of him.
In this present life or the life?
Correct. Yeah, in the present life. Yeah.
That's really weird that she was aware of him. Like aware of him or like actually knew him?
No, just aware of him.
Oh, okay.
I'm seeing it in a very like passing kind of way, meaning that like maybe somebody mentioned his name or somebody talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you just get this like little perk up in your awareness. Like you're just like, oh, yeah, for some reason that name either resonates, rings a bell, jars some sort of energetic feeling within you. But there's a recognition there. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, obviously, his parallel self has passed away from that life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
His parallel self passed away, I'm hearing, like when he was a baby in this life. He didn't live much longer in that overlap. It was only maybe 5 years or something like that.
Oh, that's funny. So out of the 4 of us, I'm the only one.
Correct. Yeah.
I live to tell the tale, I guess.
Yeah. This can get super mind bendy because you're like trying to keep track of all the different timelines of everybody.
I know.
But yeah, that is correct. You would be the last one out of the 4 of you.
Oh, and it's weird too. So I wonder if you're parallel when that woman passed away a couple of years ago. When she passed, would I have felt something?
Not necessarily. If it was not necessary for you to feel anything, you wouldn't feel anything. And I'm hearing that it was not necessary for you to feel anything because you weren't super connected to each other. There wasn't a reason for you to be connected to each other. The reason why you overlapped was simply because of timing in this life. You didn't really need a particular connection with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Most definitely.
I was like, yeah, it was a little mind bending. It went from one thing to something else. So.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and the funny thing is that this is just what we can interpret. And I feel like what goes on in these overlapping lifetimes, parallel lifetimes, those types of things is so much more complicated than we think it is.
Yeah.
It's just, we're trying to make sense of it with our human brains, and that's how we're doing it.
Yeah. I guess just another one, just out of curiosity, because about a past life, or maybe not. I just want to get down to the bottom of this because this is something that I've felt since I was a child. And so ever since I was a little child, I had this connection or fascination with like 1920s Los Angeles. And actors and actresses, it wasn't just that. I would know like people behind the scenes, like producers, directors, cameramen. And I even had this weird like connection. Like I knew Frank Morgan, and I don't know if Frank Morgan is, but he's the one that played the wizard in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I don't know. And then I had a really weird experience. I think it was about 20 years ago. Do you remember when that movie, The Aviator, came out with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
It was about Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
It first came out, and me and my husband went to the theater and we're watching it. And there's a scene where he's trying to film a scene from the movie he made called Hell's Angels about the World War I pilots. And the problem with the scene was they needed to find a bunch of clouds to do this scene. And they were waiting days and days, and it was holding up production. So I leaned over to my husband and I just said, "There's clouds in Oakland." And I don't know why I said that. 1 minute later, this guy comes running up to Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie, and he's like, "We've got clouds in Oakland. We got clouds." And I was like, and my husband goes, "How did you know that? Did you see this?" And I go, "No." I go, "This is the first time I'm seeing it with you." And so it was just weird that he just brought that up the other day too. He goes, "Yeah, that was kind of weird. How did you know that?" And I was like, I don't know how I knew that, but it's like I knew things going on like behind the scenes. And so I guess my question is like, did I work on productions? Like it was like behind the scenes, or did I have something to do with that whole scene culture? Because this is just something that I felt since I was a little kid.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look then. You were involved in that scene. I'm seeing you as a young teen. You're maybe 18, 19, somewhere like that. And they keep on saying to me that you weren't somebody significant. So in other words, like you weren't one of these people, but like, and I'm getting major chills right now.
So am I.
You knew every single person though. Like either you were and I'm just hearing the word gaffer, like either you were a gaffer or you were like a production assistant or something to that effect. You were somebody who was behind the scenes and actually did a lot of work on a lot of different movies and movie sets, but nobody really knew who you were. And you were just one of the people that was doing the stuff behind the scenes. You looked up to these people so much. Like you wanted to produce films, you wanted to be a director, and it ended up not being the case for you. You didn't go in that direction. Okay. So let's see what happened here. You were very eager and you were really wanting to get people's opinions on things. So I'm seeing you walk up to a man in a suit, and he's somebody very important. And you're saying to him that you have this idea and you were wondering if he would listen. And he was like, yeah, son, I'll have time later. And like, he just kept on brushing you off. You continued to work at the studio for quite some time. I'm seeing 5 years into your mid 20s. I'm seeing Charlie Chaplin as well. I don't know why.
Oh my God. Okay. I live 20 minutes from the original film studios where he filmed his movies.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I'm seeing that there's an aspect of what happened with your career in that lifetime where you took a different turn. You saw how convoluted everything was there because you worked there for so long and how difficult it would be to be able to do the things you wanted to do and to move up the ladder, so to speak. It was like there was a huge gap between the studio execs, the producers, the directors, and the people who were doing the job you were doing. You did move up in the ranks, but it was so slow. And you didn't want to waste your life doing that. You wanted to direct now. You didn't want to do it later. You left the studios and you didn't have another job lined up. You thought that you would be able to get another job doing something else and you weren't able to get back in. Oh, that's really sad. Yeah. Okay. Once you left the studios, you couldn't get back.
The groove of things.
No, it's like it's a very tight knit group of people that are in the studios that you worked in. And so like once you left, you couldn't get back in. It's like the clique sort of closed in on itself and like wouldn't let you back in.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that had to do with the fact that a lot of the people you knew in the past left. And so all the new people that were coming up didn't know who you were. And also the things that you did, you were living at a time where technology was advancing very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things that you did, some of the jobs were obsolete and some of the things you didn't need to do anymore. And then some other things were coming up that you didn't know how to do. And so even though you tried to get back in, you couldn't.
I'm sorry, when you said you saw Charlie Chaplin, was that like I worked in the studio with him or something?
Yes, yes.
That's so funny. It's funny too. I remember going, oh, I want to be a producer and a director and a writer. I was all telling him that.
No kidding.
No, I'm not joking. And it's funny too, because we met in West Hollywood, right? And it's funny because he was like, go for it. You can do it. He goes, you can do anything you want in your life. Like he really encouraged me to like pursue my dreams. And so, yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fun. I don't know how I knew about that. Oh, there's clouds in Oakland. I wonder if I was on the set.
It's very possible you were. It's very possible you were. I'm seeing that you were bouncing around a lot. You were going to a lot of different like film sets and stuff. It's like wherever they needed you, they put you. So you did travel a bit. And it's funny because you're talking about Charlie Chaplin and being close to that area where he used to be filming.
Yeah.
He also had a filming studio in Chicago.
You're talking about SNA?
Yeah. Yeah. I lived very close to that as well when I lived in Chicago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it is possible that you would have traveled to that studio as well.
Funny. No wonder I was feeling something with Chicago. That's funny.
Okay. So then they're saying that you don't really need to know much else about that lifetime. Like I'm just seeing the rest of that lifetime just kind of fall away. I'm getting that you did eventually get another job and you just kind of lived out kind of a normal life from that point on. But that was a little bit of a regret that you had because you felt like you probably should have stayed in when you left, but you were getting really frustrated with the fact that you weren't moving forward as quickly as you wanted to be. Yeah.
And I was a man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You had brown hair. You were tall, skinny. Your hair was kind of like thin and over your forehead, like on one side, like you had a side part and it was like sort of long down to your eyebrows over your forehead. You had a very interesting stance, the way that you stood. It was almost like you were sitting back on something, almost like always leaning against something, even though you weren't. Like that's how you stood.
And I'm wondering because I had that like where I thought there's a few people that I like, oh, I think I know them. For instance, I said Frank Morgan, and the other one that I really felt like, I'm like, oh, I know those two. Don't even laugh, but Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, funny. Oh, yeah.
I was like, I thought like Oliver Hardy was like this like big heart and he was like such a little pushover. And then the skinny one, Stan, I'm like, oh, he's like real sensitive. It's like weird. It's like I knew these weird things about them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you were most likely remembering these things. Most definitely. I'm going to close the Akashic Records. Thank you so much to Okula, my Akashic guide, for being here and guiding us through the records. We are closing the Akashic Records. The records are closed. The records are closed. The records are closed. Thank you. Thank you to Archangel Metatron and Archangel Sandalphon for guiding us and telling us all of the information we needed to know today. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
once again, I would like to thank Maggie for allowing me to record her session for the benefit of the podcast. One of the more common questions I get when I have somebody who's interested in having an Akashic Records session is, what happens if I was a horrible person in a previous lifetime? And my answer is always, you probably were. And I know that sounds very flip, if you will, and I don't mean to be, because sometimes we are really, truly horrible people in previous lifetimes. The challenge with it is accepting the fact that every single person on this planet, in some incarnation or another, has played the villain in the story. Now, whether that's because it is something that they signed up for, it's something that maybe in the soul planning meeting it was meant to happen, or maybe it was just something that happened due to wounding, psychic debris, experience, free will even. It really depends on the situation. So many people will say to me, oh my gosh, what if I was a Nazi in a previous lifetime? Oh my God, what if I was this? What if I was that? And when you think about historically, the amount of bad things that have happened, the amount of wars that have happened, there were a lot of people involved in those wars, right? On both sides. And so you could say that maybe you were in an army that was run by Genghis Khan. You could have been German and on the side of the Germans during World War II. You could have been any number of people over the course of our Earth's history. And when you think about it from that perspective, it is very likely that not only have you been a person who has maybe not been so great once, but it's probably happened many times. Now, the really good thing is that if it is a lifetime that is far, far in the past for us, so to speak, meaning that obviously time doesn't exist beyond this Earth plane, but from the perspective of our linear time, the further back you go in your experience, the less likely it is that you're still experiencing pushback or ramifications from that particular lifetime. Most people who are going to be getting Akashic Record sessions with me at this time are most likely pretty spiritually evolved at this point, or at the very least, you're on your spiritual journey and you've really come to an understanding of how the universe works in its very basic principles. And so from that perspective, you have to understand that whatever happened in the past, you do not have to be punished for it. You do not have to have guilt about it. And actually, a lot of our lifetimes are served by getting over that guilt, getting over that shame, and not beating ourselves up over it. Because the hell, so to speak, that we can put ourselves in after having a lifetime like that can be significant. We can really make ourselves suffer needlessly and not necessarily take the lessons with us if we are continually beating ourselves up over what happened in the past. Now that can go for your current lifetime as well. Let's say you did something really bad to somebody recently. You don't have to hold on to it. You can learn from it and decide not to do it again. Take responsibility and then move forward and try to make amends in every way that you can in order to right the ship, so to speak. You're making a decision to go in a different direction, to guide your life in a way that is more aligned for you versus operating from your wounding. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about a particular lifetime that maybe is challenging like this, where maybe you were not a fantastic person. You're going to feel what you're going to feel. But as you heard in Maggie's session, the guides are never going to tell you something that you don't need to hear. So if you do hear about a lifetime where maybe you weren't a great person, maybe it's because you need context for your current life. Maybe you need to let go of some things. Maybe there are some issues between you and another person, like it was with Maggie and her mom, where having that perspective can give you what you need to shift and change the relationship. But if you were somebody horrible in a previous lifetime and it serves no purpose for you to know it, it will happen exactly like it did in this session, where the guides will simply tell me, you don't need to know that information. It's not relevant to you anymore. Understand that this is all part of our journey. If we had no contrast, if we had no challenge, then we don't grow. That's just how it works. What I want you to connect to are the times where you had the hardest time, where you had the most contrast. And consider what happened after. Consider how much you changed after. Did you move through it? Did you go through it and come out the other side with more information, more knowledge about yourself, about the other person, the other people? Or did you stay stuck? Did you stay stuck in the same cycle? Are you still stuck in the same cycle? Those are all questions that you can really ask yourself when it comes to this. We often want to have the best possible experience we can when we come to incarnate on this planet. But the best possible experience doesn't always mean that you are going to have everything you've ever wanted and everything in your life is going to go absolutely smoothly. You have to tap into the reason why you're here. And that's why having your soul origin, your soul purpose, your life purpose, those things are really important. Because when you have that context of why you're here and what you're doing, it can help you understand why you're having the experiences that you're having. It can give you the tools that you need to be able to move through these lessons more quickly. So maybe the contrast or the challenges that you have don't have to last as long as they have in the past. I saw a meme the other day that just describes this perfectly. And it basically said, you're connecting to God and you're saying to God, why do I have to have all these challenges? And the response is, if you were to watch a movie and everything worked out for this person had no challenges, nothing to overcome. Everything just came to this person very easily. They had money, they had abundance, they had the job they wanted, the wife or husband or spouse that they wanted, and everything just worked out for them for their entire life. Is that a movie that you'd want to watch? And it's true. We do want to have these experiences that enrich our lives. And if everything is just handed to us, we don't have to actually work for it. We don't have the opportunity to appreciate the difference in those experiences. So let's say you've always had abundance and you've never known what it was like to struggle with abundance or money or gifts or receiving. You're going to have a really hard time having compassion for others who do struggle with that. And I want to ask my guides a little question about this. Why is that? Why can't we have compassion for others without having the contrast? The answer to that question is much more simple than you think it is. The contrast is there to give you a reference point. If you have no reference point, then you don't know what you're weighing the energy against. If you can imagine, you have a point on your timeline, and let's call this point abundance. And let's say you have another point on this timeline, and this other point is also called abundance. Is there any difference between those 2 points on that line? No, there are not. They are the exact same point on the exact same line. So why would the points be even necessary? Why would those reference points be even necessary? They wouldn't, because the line itself would completely be abundance. And it would continue and continue until that is interrupted. Once it is interrupted, that is when you can acknowledge that the rest of the line was abundance. So let's say that line has another point on it, and that line is lack. Now you can start seeing the difference between what it means to have abundance and what it means to have lack. Let's say you have 2 parallel lines, one representing one person, another representing another person. And you can observe that other line and what they are going through. They are going through lack, let's say, and you're going through abundance. And you can look over at that other line and understand that that other person is going through lack. But it is exactly what Annette says all the time, which is you have to experience it yourself in order to integrate the information. We've talked about this often on this podcast, where you can know something, you can read something and have the knowledge of it, but until you experience it yourself, you are not fully integrating that information. Therefore, if you are observing somebody else's timeline who is in lack, you do not really truly know what that means until you yourself experience lack. And then once you experience that, then you can learn to appreciate the abundance you had. Now, it's not to say that you can't appreciate the abundance you have without having that experience of lack, but it is harder to appreciate it because it just becomes your norm. We're going to use the example, a very silly example, in fact. One of the things that you can relate to is smell. When you walk into somebody's house and you smell a beautiful candle or some really lovely scent that they have in their home, it hits you in the face. You can smell it really, really well the second you walk in the door. But if you ask the owner, chances are they don't smell it anymore because it is their norm. It is their normal of what they experience on a day-to-day basis, so they almost don't even notice it. It is the very same with this situation. If you have the contrast of being outside and not having the scent, and then coming inside and having the scent hit you in the face, you can tell the difference between those two spaces and what you've experienced. It's a reference point, and that is what is necessary on this planet for your experience. All right, thank you, Akula. Thank you for that information. One of the more mind-bendy things we talked about in today's session was the idea of having overlapping timelines or overlapping lifetimes. We can talk about this in terms of parallel lifetimes as well. Now, there are different definitions for each one of these things, and having overlapping lifetimes is just something that I came up with the information that my guides gave me in this particular session. As I was mentioning about what happened with Maggie, was that she had a lifetime where she was existing in this current time in a previous life. So there were technically two versions of her soul existing simultaneously on this planet. And that can happen. And I'm sure it happens quite often, but we're usually pretty unaware of it. I feel like the only reason why we would need to be aware of it is if it is being done for a particular purpose, for a reminder of a particular energy, or whatever it is that we have decided in our soul planning meeting. So the one thing that I would like to ask my guides right now is if they can give us a little bit more information on parallel lives, as well as this concept of overlapping timelines or overlapping lives. Parallel lives do exist. They exist in many different forms, though. One of the forms that is most commonly known is having a parallel life that is happening simultaneously with your life, just in another dimension. So let's say you have a version of yourself here in this current reality, and you are an accountant, and you are married, and you have children. And maybe there's another parallel life version of yourself who isn't married, who isn't an accountant. And maybe you've become an actress in that lifetime, and maybe you're incredibly successful. There can be different parallel versions of yourself based on the decisions that you have made, not only in your soul planning meetings, but also the decisions that you have made with your own free will in your human existence. Based on these decisions, different things can happen in your trajectory. Now, it's not a free-for-all, as there are guidelines and there are plans that get put into place. And therefore, there are a finite number of parallel lives that you could have for any given incarnation. This is contrary to what a lot of other people say. Many people say that you could have an infinite number of parallel lifetimes. And we're going to tell you that for a particular incarnation, that is not entirely true. And the reason for this is because you have gone on so many different journeys in your soul's existence that there are certain things that would just not happen given your energetic frequency. So let's say you are on your spiritual journey now and you have gone through a lot of your shadow work already. There can be another version of yourself that maybe is not as spiritually advanced and therefore hasn't gone through as much of the shadow work. And maybe that person in that parallel timeline is having a harder time. But in both of those dimensions, you have a soul energy that is very similar. It's not going to be significantly different from what you have already in terms of your energetic field. So let's say, for example, you had a past life where you were a horrible person, as we are talking about this today. Let's say you were a murderer in a previous lifetime. It is very unlikely that you would do that in a parallel life in this current state of your energetic field, because your energetic field has already arisen to a particular frequency where that is just simply not possible for you to do. It is not in your energetic frequency. So therefore, there are a limited amount of parallel lives that you can have when it comes to your energetic frequency. Those are the most common. People understand the parallel lives in terms of different dimensions. People talk about the multiverse as it pertains to your Marvel movies. And all of that is relatively accurate when it comes to understanding how different dimensions and parallel lives function. There can be many other ways in which parallel lives can interact with each other. If you have a parallel lifetime that is in the same dimension, then you can have much more of an effect on your energy based on the other parallel version of you interacting with the current version of you. In this particular case with Maggie in this session, she had an overlapping timeline, if you will, or someone who is her soul incarnated in another body, but also incarnated simultaneously as she is now. The time frames were overlapping. Now, granted, she is not on this planet any longer, but she did have an effect on Maggie's experience just simply by being here, by having that energy on this planet at the same time as her incarnation in the current body has an effect on her energy field. And that is often done by design. Maggie's soul absolutely decided that in a soul planning meeting that said that she was going to incarnate and overlap those timelines and have almost a parallel existence with a different version of herself. We have the freedom to do this. And there are various different reasons why you would do this. There are many tools that are available to each and every soul to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish, to learn the things that they want to learn, to have the experiences that they want to. And it's all a bit of fun and games almost when you are in your soul planning meeting and it's a joyous occasion to put together all of these puzzle pieces. And it's not until you get here on this planet that you start thinking, oh no, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. And that's okay. It's all part of the process. So there are times when you make a decision, such as having overlapping timelines, where maybe you would meet when you weren't otherwise meant to. And could that have a detrimental effect? It might, because you might be shown a mirror of something that you don't want to see. But could that also be effective? Even if it's not exactly the thing that you wanted to experience, but it could actually help you. This is why we often say that even if you are off your path, you can still learn a great deal from your experience. It might be tougher. You might have a harder time doing it, but it's still going to help you in the long run. A lot of people make a really big deal out of parallel lives and having these overlapping timelines. And we will just simply say that it's just another tool. It's just another way to have the experiences that you are wanting to have. It's about exploring those different timelines to see what would happen if this played out or that played out, whatever scenario you are looking into. And this is where Annette has talked many times about timelines, baby timelines, just going out and trying something and seeing if it works and then coming back and realizing, nope, that's not where I want to go. Okay, let's close out that timeline. We're constantly closing out timelines, collapsing timelines, because we realize that maybe it's not the right fit or it's not to our benefit. And this also proves a bit further that we would not necessarily have infinite parallel lifetimes because we've already collapsed so many of those timelines. Now, if you were in the very first incarnation on this planet and you were brand new to this planet, could you have an infinite number of parallel lives or timelines? Yes. That is one time where you could. If this was your very first incarnation, which I can tell you right now, there are very few people on this planet where it is their first incarnation on this planet. But those people might have an infinite number of timelines simply because they have not weeded them out yet. They have not identified the timelines that work for them and the ones that don't. So the more you weed out those timelines, the more you hone in on exactly what it is that is necessary for your experience. All right. Thank you for that. All right. Lastly, I'm going to talk about ascension partners. This term gets discussed often when referencing twin flames. And ascension partners are essentially your mirror. They are going to be somebody who comes into your experience to help you grow. They are likely going to be giving you contrast. They are likely going to be giving you challenges. You have to accept the fact that they will be giving you challenges, because in order for you to see your blind spots, so to speak, you're going to have someone who shows you those experiences so you can grow. Ascension partners can be mistaken for twin flames for this reason, because twin flames really do that effectively, where you are each other's mirror. You show each other the wounding that you have. You show each other the work that needs to be done. And it can be a pretty volatile connection while you're going through your shadow work, because you're constantly triggering each other. An ascension partner can look very much the same in that respect. The biggest difference is the ascension partner is not your soul. An ascension partner is another soul completely different from yours that you have decided to have in your experience in order to trigger your spiritual awakening. The only reason why an ascension partner might not be as effective as going through a twin flame experience would be because you're not connected on a soul level. So the connection energetically is not as strong. Your desire to hang out with that person or have that person in your life is not going to be as strong as it would be if you are in a twin flame connection. Because in a twin flame connection, you are the same soul in two different bodies. So it's almost impossible for you to disconnect from that energy because it's always existing. And talking about parallel lives, there are many out there that believe that our twin flame is just a different version of us in a previous incarnation. So another one of those overlapping lifetimes that is happening simultaneously, in which you do meet that person, where you do have interactions with that person. And what better way to trigger the things that we need to work on than looking at a previous version of ourselves, right? And my angels are telling me right now that that is the case for some. For some twin flames, it is absolutely the case. Not for all. Some of them are actually incarnated in two separate bodies and are going on their journey simultaneously as souls. And other twin flames, they have the overlapping situation. So it really just depends on who you're talking to. My new favorite thing is everything is possible. If you consider the entire universe is just energy, anything is possible. Absolutely anything. Now, when it comes to our soul's journey, we can narrow things down based on the specific experiences that we want to have. But could you open that back up again and expand it to be infinite? Yeah, you totally could. When the guides were talking about how we don't necessarily have infinite parallel lives, it is not because we don't have the ability to. It's because we have decided not to. It's all about decisions. It's all about our free will, what our souls came here to do, and what we're here to accomplish. Let me know if you have any questions about this. I would love to talk about this further. If some questions popped up while you were listening to this discussion or this session, please feel free to put it in the comments in social media. If you're listening to this on YouTube, put it in the YouTube comments, or you can always shoot me an email. I always love hearing from you and hearing your questions, and I love answering them on the podcast. I very much look forward to connecting with you next week, and have an amazing day. If you've been enjoying this podcast, it would mean so much if you could like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform. And if you feel inspired, leaving a review is always appreciated. If you're following along on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode of the Akashic Recordings. Also, if you feel called to work with me personally, you can book a session at any time at infinitesoullove.com. Everything can be scheduled directly on my website. Thank you so much for your support, and I can't wait to connect with you again next week.